welcome back to Run the Terra. This is episode 19. I am Grandmaster Dan.
I'm Adam Munoz.
And I'm Stan Jaruzelski.
And today we're going to be doing a splash deep dive into Freljord. Oh, wait, we couldn't because the water was frozen because it's Freljord. That's just a little bit of humor we're kind of bringing to this episode, and it's probably going to end there. We're going to be talking really all about Freljord, the strengths and weaknesses, what they like to play with, maybe something we'd like to see in the future. Listen up, Riot. We're your game designers now.
But actually, please listen to us, pay us, hire me, please.
Yeah, I could use a different job than the one I got right now. But yeah, is there anything to talk about before we get into that with the meta right now, Stan? How's it looking?
Well, we have a really interesting development in the meta. Kinko elusives are back, baby.
That itch that just don't quit. It just keeps coming back.
So we're back in a meta. I think with all the life gain gone and some of these harder control things out of the way, Kinko elusives is back to being it's a really nice spot for Kinko elusives. They're good right now because of how the meta is shaping out and because they can go under a lot of decks really easily. It's kind of funny because it's pretty much the exact same deck it used to be. We've added some Fury of the North's in is basically the only real big change to the deck from what it used to be, and that's about it. One new card and just the same strategy.
But it's a Freljord card.
Embarrassingly, we are. I think we were all wrong on Fury of the North. I mean, not that I'm that worried about being wrong on that card, but if the way it looks right now is that card literally made elusives good again. So it makes me feel kind of bad in a way.
Yeah, but
that's fair. I was thinking that would be medium at best, and I was wrong.
Yeah, I was thinking that was going to be like an expedition jammer and not so much a ladder jammer.
I don't think it's the card pushing the deck over the edge, but I certainly don't think it hurts.
I would hope so, or else it wouldn't be in the deck.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
They're purposely nerfing their own deck so they don't get nerfed as hard by Riot.
Exactly.
It's kind of brilliant.
That's actually what that card's doing there.
That explains why. I mean, again, this is the long game plan with the Yasuo deck. In case anybody was had forgotten.
Yeah. Peaks and valleys.
Yeah, we're just kind of purposely nerfing this deck. We have purposely solved it, but not given the best deck so that one day it will shine in all of its disgusting greatness.
We've got Burn Aggro's teching Teemo now, and they're kind of back up and strong in the meta. So, Aggro's in right now. But I think this is something that's going to shift because you're also seeing more mid-range decks that are kind of designed to eat them up. A little bit of the life gain can come back to eat them up, and it's not like they're just the best hands down. They're within reason. They just have a lot of good matchups and are very easy to ladder with because they go fast.
I mean, this is maybe because I haven't played in 10 minutes. I play every day all the time, but I'm seeing there's a new deck with Sejuani and Misfortune in it. Do you know anything about this? You guys heard about this?
Yeah, that's been happening for the past few weeks.
Okay, I missed it.
Yeah,
it's just a mid-range deck.
Yep.
It's it's what happens when you nerf the mid-range deck that just uses numbers. You get these kind of weird mid-range decks that use things like buffs and
synergy,
actual game mechanics.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And
love to see it.
They're pretty well positioned against things like Bannerman. They are just a bit slower than Bannerman, so they're able to kind of stabilize out and take over the rest of the game against them. They're still fast enough to survive aggro and fight on the ground and dominate the board and go from there. So it's
also shout out to my boy Riptide Rex, Big Slamoo. He's making an appearance in those decks. 3-0, baby.
Big Slamoo's a big
card's
card
good, man.
But in general, we're also just seeing a lot more Freljord show up. Kinko elusives. Yoink Sejuani, Tempo Endure is still a very powerful deck right now, despite the nerf to Makey Spider card. Not
Brood Awakening?
Brood Awakening!
Yes, that one.
Makey Spider card, which they're not playing anymore. They're just playing like Haunted Relics and
Fury
stuff
of the
instead.
North. It just keeps showing up, people.
Yeah, it's trying to
everywhere.
keep these decks intact, you know, making sure they're not too good. But yeah, we're seeing still some good meta diversity. There's every region is pretty much accounted for somewhere between a tier 1 or tier 2 deck, and they're all still close enough to be viable builds. Nothing's like terrible
Nice,
or
dude.
out there, which
Viable,
is
but nice.
yes, it is. Oh fuck, right, we're back to viable. Damn, dude.
Embarrassing.
I had a rough night, you know. I gotta come back in off my stupor and get back in the fucking swing of things with viable.
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
it's rough.
Jeez, dude.
But yeah, you know, it's pretty solid meta we're in right now. That we're still in right now. Probably be nice to knock these burn things off the chart for a bit here soon, just because I'm always a little worried when Kinko Elusives is at the very tippy top of the meta, but you know, I don't think it's.
To be fair, part of what makes Kinko Elusives at the top of the meta is that it's only been a week and people aren't expecting it. People will get back to their old my deck beats Kinko Elusives builds pretty soon.
Yeah.
It's just the way things are. It's the circle of life and metagames.
Yeah, Runeterra is the way it goes, so we got it. Yeah, that's pretty much all that's going on in the meta right now. Not too many changes besides that. Just some stabilization more than anything.
Well, Adam, I think I'm going to hand over the reins to you, being our resident Freljord expert. You spent many years at Freljord College, learning how to make freezy pops and stuff. So maybe you can step up and kind of tell us a little bit about this great region.
So the Freljord, the frozen north of Runeterra, is a region that plays the long game in nearly everything it does. That means its strengths tend to be things that encourage the long game. It is one of the best regions at AoE damage. It's fairly good at healing, and it's fairly good at buffs. And conversely, it's good at frostbite. It has frostbite, which kind of serves the same function as a buff, which is winning a combat, but by messing with your opponent's stats. Mm-hmm. Lastly, because it's the champion of late game regions, it has tools to get to the late game faster and to utilize its late game better. So it's the region that best utilizes, or that's the only region that has mana ramp, and it's one of the two regions that has enlightened cards.
Wee woo.
Yeah.
Additionally, as it needs some other removal tools, it has the highest density of challenger units. I'm betting you guys forgot that because they aren't amazing challenger units, but they're there.
Interesting. I did not realize that. Wow.
Yeah, because they have Wolfie Boy. They got
the Wolf's a good
other
one.
wolf.
Yeah, they got the other challenger.
Oh, the
Wolfie
one with the
Boy.
snow hair. Yeah.
Yep.
Those are the only two I know.
And then, God, yeah, what are the challenger? What?
Actually, maybe Demacia has them out challengered. I might have that checked.
All right.
Wrong.
Stats time.
All right.
Wow.
Breakout
Braum.
stats.
Duh, they have Braum.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, that's
three.
Yeah.
Three.
So yeah, so Demacia is the highest density of challenger units. Freljord is second. My apologies.
There you go.
I'm gonna count it out.
Yep, I will fact check myself because it's necessary.
Versus not 3. Yeah, no, it's definitely Demacia's got him.
Yeah, okay, so Demacia are the champions of challenger, but Freljord's got the tools, and Rhymefang Wolf is a surprisingly decent card.
Yeah, it is.
All right, now that we've talked about these wonderful strengths of the Freljord, let's talk about its weaknesses. Big number one is because Freljord's a slow region, it doesn't really do well at aggression. Other than the occasional Omen Hawk, there's very little in Freljord that plays well to an aggressive build.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Additionally, Freljord, uniquely among the various regions, has 3 tribes it's trying to support in Elnuks, Yetis, and Poros. Which isn't necessarily a downside, except in that it's got a bunch of cards for those that don't really support any other deck or do anything else. So it's got more dead cards if you're not playing one of those dedicated decks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Furthermore, very few of those cards play well on their own, right? Elise is a perfectly fine card on her own, and as is Brood Awakening, even after the nerf, it's kind of okay. And Vile Feast, right? Spiders work well. Bannerman at least is a solid deck, just is stable enough on its own. so for the Demacian Elites thing, but the Freljord's decks have kind of not gotten there. Well, except for the one time Elnux was good, and they decided that that was a bad thing.
Yeah, that's true. Elnux were a little wonky. They've been dying for those sins ever since.
So additionally, Freljord has two other problems, having to do with the fact that it's a late game region. The first is that it's a bit inefficient. Because you are expected to play later game units, a lot of your stuff costs more in the Freljord than it might otherwise cost, and you get something that's nominally better but not practically better. So, for example, Harsh Winds is 6 mana to frostbite 2 enemies. It's a fine defensive card, and you're usually at a point where you can pay for it, but it's, among defensive cards, it's just doesn't stand out that much. It's not going to prevent a ton of damage most of the time.
Well, and a lot of decks now have even been able to start using it as an offensive tool. Like the Sejuani deck will use it to kind of push through some added damage, or like to make sure that creature trading goes in your favor. So I mean,
certainly, but among all the ways you can push through extra damage, this will not always push through more damage than just like, I don't know, a Get Excited, which costs 3 mana.
Right.
So again, the region is expected to play slower and have more mana, but it means some of their cards are inefficient. And lastly, and this one is really on the designers, the region of expensive cards actually has some of the worst finishers in the game.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
I mean, other than They Who Endure, your big expensive Freljord cards, a few of the champions, but other than They Who Endure and the champions, you're mostly not playing Freljord finishers. She Who Wanders is enormous, but it's not competitive. I mean, War Mother's Call had a brief stint where it was kind of good, but costing 12 mana is just such a liability.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love War Mother's Call. That card's super fun. I want it to be good, but I have to be honest and say it's just not.
Honestly, it was a lot more fun when you would just discard it to that old Mage Seeker and make like a 13-17 or whatever on turn 4. It was a lot more fun then.
That's a way to abuse big cards in the right way.
It was, yeah.
Much more reasonable decision making.
But unfortunately, what Freljord doesn't have is something like a Ledros or even a big Slamu, right? It doesn't have cards that just kind of win the game on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, She Who Wanders does do that, but just barely. Like, I mean, She Who Wanders does decimate certain decks, but, it's not...
Yeah, but it's not as universal as Ledros.
Right.
Exactly, I'd agree that She Who Wanders decimates certain decks if it didn't also lose to every control deck.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Right. The biggest problem with She Who Wanders is that as good as she is against all the small decks and like winning games against certain decks, she is just the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to the control versus control matchup.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't even kill small champions, right? So your opponent's Ezreal gets to sit and play and laugh at that effect.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and like I said, that's definitely not enough. They need something that has a more ubiquitous finishing power. I mean, Tryndamere felt that way in the early days of the game, but then as I think the meta shifted, it's still too late, and it's still not enough when it hits.
Well, I mean, I actually think Tryndamere, if he wasn't a champion, would be a finisher of that power level, right? The fact that he stays in play when he's answered, unlike Ledros. Like, I played him a lot in Shadow Isles Freljord Control for quite a while, just as yet another finisher, because when you put him into play, it was much harder for him to be answered by anything that wasn't exactly Will of Ionia.
Right. Absolutely.
But unfortunately, he takes a champion slot, right? You can't just be a good finisher in a champion slot. You have to be better than that.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that is kind of sad. I mean, to me, it might be more... I mean, yes, it's a failure problem, but I think it's also like... Riot seems to have an issue with designing finishers in general. Like, just like from how we see them changing costs on things like Rasa and Ledra so much, like, they just don't know where they need these costs to be for a finisher, and like that's fine, right? Like, it's going to take some time, but...
I have a theory on that, and it comes from playing a lot of Hearthstone. So in Magic, right, if you want to, how you cost a finisher is kind of important, and because you have to draw your lands, your mana crystals for those of you who don't play Magic, you can like the amount something costs. You can set your finisher's costs to 6, and that's a distinct power level. And then 7, you have a lot more power budget because drawing 1 extra land is not trivial.
Mhm.
Yes.
Whereas in Legends of Runeterra, you're always gonna hit 10 mana, right?
Yeah.
As long as you
So-
survive.
Yeah, as long as you survive. But that means that any deck can put in an expensive card and
There's
theoretically
less
still play it.
opportunity cost. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly, which means that finishers are more vulnerable to abuse by mid-range decks and even aggro decks.
Yeah,
Right? Ledros
exactly.
didn't get nerfed as a control finisher. Ledros got nerfed as a card mid-range decks could include
Which
at
is
no
top
cost.
out with. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a very good point.
So I think that it's kind of an inherent issue with automatic mana systems where finishers are always every finisher runs the risk of being an aggro card, so they all have to cost near the maximum of the system,
Right.
which then leaves very little room for flexing their power budget around, right? If every
Yeah.
finisher has to cost 9 or 10, then you can't make a finisher more powerful and increase its cost, or less powerful and decrease its cost, right? You have only a 1 mana range.
That's very true.
So yeah, maybe they could make. Maybe there's like a synergistic finishers they could do or something that more relies on I guess depth of mechanic, or like
Or
a
specific
synergy
deck, specific deck construction also, right? I mean, they've
exactly.
done a lot of that with champions. Swain is kind of a finisher, and he only costs 5, but you play him with he only is a finisher in a specific deck. You can't just throw a Swain in and call it a day.
Yeah.
Right.
Same with
Also, I'd like
Heimer.
to point out that the way finishers are, yes, Heimer as well, but the way finishers are constructed in this game is another reason Freljord suffers. Being the region that is best at getting to your late game faster, in a world where if you get to your late game faster, I mean, everyone's still going to get there, is a challenge. One of the benefits of ramp in a game like Magic is the ramp is also mana, right? It's also it serves a similar effect to drawing and playing a land. It's a certain amount of card advantage in that way.
Yeah.
So
Whereas in Legends of Runeterra, if you spend a card ramping, that's card disadvantage because eventually your opponent will get to that card point, and then that mana point, and you won't be able to go further than that.
Yeah, you've got a very small window of actual viability with ramping in automatic mana system games. Once your opponent gets to turn 10 as well, it's like, well, this is a waste.
exactly. Which so I wonder then if maybe for some of these control finishers in the game, maybe we can get things later on that kind of more check how late into the game you are. Like, essentially, it's not that you can cast it on turn 10, you have to make it to turn, 10 or 15 to, 12 or 15 to actually play the card. And that pushes it away from being more of a mid-range tool and, something that only control decks really want to be playing.
Yeah.
So Freljord actually does do that in 2 different ways, right? War Mother's Call costs an actual 12. I mean, you can theoretically play it on 10, but even so, it has a larger investment, which I kind of like. And They Who Endure is another finisher that scales significantly with game length, right? You can play it on 6, but it won't be that big. And if you play it on turn 25, it's going to be a monster.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think maybe leaning into that is a good way for, giving Freljord control decks identity and keeping them control decks with control finishers that don't threaten to be too good in other game plans, essentially.
What if this day-night thing is their attempt at that? What if day-night's it starts out daytime and then ends up nighttime towards X number of turns?
That's a
That
possibility.
would be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thought.
I mean,
But then if it goes long enough, it
it's-
becomes daytime again, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
it depends on how long they do day-night and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
it'd be
It also
really
occurs to me
interesting
that deep is another way of working that, though
Right.
they did kind of allow you to rush to deep.
to aggro.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like deep, if you just told me about the mechanic and didn't tell me that they had put in jettison and dreg dredgers and stuff like that, I would say, oh, that sounds like a really good way of making it so that there's a secret extra third phase of the late game.
Right.
On the other
Yeah,
hand,
it's just they
what
also
did instead
didn't-
was they made it very easy to get to deep.
And they put
Yes.
none of that into Freljord because it's like almost exclusively bound to SI and Bilge.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Yep.
like what, one deep card in SI. I guess Maokai is like sort of secret deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of deep enablers in SI as well. Like
That's
the
fair. There's a lot
enablers
of
and
cost in SI.
yeah, I
Yep.
think there might be like 2 actual payoff cards for deep, being Maokai and
Terra of the Deeps or whatever it's called, the ghost
Yep.
ship.
yep,
Terra
the
of
ghost
the
ship. I forget if there was. No, yeah, it's just Terra the Deep or Terra the Tides. That's the only
Terror of the Tides. There it is.
only other.
Terror of the Tide Pods.
Oh yeah.
There's something there. There's something there to
Eating-
mine.
Eating
Anyways,
those Tide Pods, bringing it back to good old few years ago.
2016 memes or whatever.
Yeah. Whew.
So, moving along a bit, let's talk about the best and worst cards in Freljord. And we'll go around the table and see who thinks and see what you guys think. So let's start with you, Dan. What do you think the top Freljord cards, champion and non-champion?
Fury of the North. I would say probably the best champion. Let me look really quickly. If I had to guess, Sedge. I mean, Sedge is probably the best one that I can think of. And then
Yeah, I mean, Sedge does have the numbers.
yeah, and then non-champion, I'd probably give it to. Honestly, I'd probably give it to Elixir of Iron, like, and Fury of the North, just because they're both. That's what I mostly see these cards in and doing.
I mean, burst speed buffs are the real deal. I see the
Yeah.
logic.
yeah, and like it's the main thing that sees competitive play. I guess there's an argument that like something like an Avalanche is good, but it doesn't really. I'm trying to think of the card that signals Freljord the most. And
Nah,
I guess
just
it's
talk
burst
about what's
speed,
best.
health spells. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Stan. What about you? Where do you lie on this?
So for
Best
champion,
card.
it's probably. I mean, Sedge as of right now. None of the other Freljordian champions are doing much in the meta right now. Sedge is really the only one putting up any real numbers. We're gonna definitely need some shifts before. Like, I think a lot of the champs here have potential, but they're all just. There's no home for any of them right now, especially with things like War Mother's gone. Because with no good War Mother's decks, you don't have a spot for Tryndamere or Anivia, really. Braum's always in a weird place where, like, he can be good if the meta's just right, but they're all super finicky besides. Like,
I mean, the problem with Braum seems to be that the ways you tend to do aggro in this game are fearsome, elusives, or burn, all of which Braum does nothing for.
Exactly. And I feel like Sedge might also end up just being a flavor, and she's putting up numbers right now, and she's definitely the top Freljord champion right now. But I mean, I would assume. I mean, God, I'm really trying to think of who could even take the throne, like in a vacuum. Who's, if any of these are even better than her, if meta shifts and something happens. And I mean,
she's got the best numbers for her cost, right?
exactly.
I mean, Tryndamere's good, but at 8 mana, you want something that wins you the game. And Ashe, Anivia, and Braum are all understated because their effects are very powerful. Sejuani's the only one who's both got a pretty decent effect, and also just you'd be fine playing her on curve if she didn't have the effect. Not excited, but fine.
Ashe is also in contention, just because Ashe always manages to support her own deck at the very least, and it is always a deck that's at least worth attempting. If Sedge falls off, Ashe is probably back as being the top Freljordian champion, just because she does do something very powerful and is maybe even better costed overall than Sejuani is. Her numbers aren't quite as good, which is 4-5-3, but the ability and when it comes down and when it happens, and especially her flipped side, are all very powerful.
My two biggest problems with Ashe are, one, the Yasuo problem. She has exactly one deck, build it or you lose. And two, that 3 health.
Right.
I mean, we say this at least once a week. 3 health is miles worse than 4 health.
Absolutely. But she does always have, that, even though she is forced into her deck is always something that is at least somewhat viable. It's not necessarily a bad plan, which does give her a little bit of credit at least.
And also, unlike Yasuo, her deck is not secretly. It's like 2-region locked. You kind of can flex around the second region.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's a lot more a lot more variance with what you can do with Ash,
You know,
which is nice.
Yasuo may well be just actually secretly a Noxian card. Like,
Right,
you
yeah.
barely need the Ionian cards in Yasuo's deck.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
exaggerating somewhat, but like you need
yeah.
Ionian Noxus for Yasuo. Ash, you can depending on what you think the best support for her is, you can run her in a bunch of different ways. In fact, we've seen her run in different ways. We've seen Spooky Ash with Shadow Isles and Revival shenanigans. We've seen Ash Noxus for 5-power draw interactions. We've seen a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's definitely up there. And then non-champion, probably have to give it to Omen Hawk as being like the next most ubiquitous.
Yeah, that's
just
fair.
if there's a Freljord deck, it's running Omen Hawk. I don't think there's any way you don't. Like it's just such a good little value tool, and it allows you to do so much from the early game. You know, it's a good chump blocker on one, and then it's a great way to kind of push yourself over the edge for the next few turns, and you know, stabilize the first few turns of the game, and either get ahead and win right there, or make sure that you're surviving long enough to get into your later game. So, he's a very good little hawk. That's real good.
All right, and so now I gotta give my answers, and you guys are probably completely unsurprised by me saying Anivia is the best champion. Because, well, I love the bird. The bird is the word.
Nice, dude.
All joking aside, Anivia is good in most matchups. You know,
All 2007 Family Guy references aside.
Oh boy.
Oh, my friend, no. I knew Surf and Bird before Family Guy because I am a 60s and 70s music aficionado.
Very cool. This is a very cool fact.
Yeah, I'm a huge fucking nerd, I know.
Hey guys, brush up on your Run the Terra trivia.
Yeah, so this is going to be the last episode because no one's going to listen to us anymore after that.
Anivia is good in most matchups. As against control, she's nearly always trading for 2 cards, and against aggro, she's almost always threatening their board and or closing out the game. She shuts the door.
Yeah.
Additionally, she just once she hits play, your opponent has to respect her, right? You can't, you know, other champions you can often play around, but Anivia, if she's there, she is going to be doing something that your opponent doesn't want. And your opponent will have to answer her, and usually post haste, because otherwise you'll just snowball the card advantage.
Yeah.
As for which non-champion I think is the best, I want to say Avalanche or War Mother's Call because I love these cards. But if I'm going to be perfectly honest, it's almost certainly Omen Hawk. The card just, when it comes down, it's the only thing you can do early game in Freljord, but it's so good that decks will splash Freljord for basically just Omen Hawk, or now Omen Hawk and Fury at the North.
Yep. Yeah. That's pretty true. All right, so what about worst cards? I guess
Go ahead, Dan. What's the worst
card? Champ? Yeah, I mean, worst champ, we already talked about.
Don't even bother with worst champ.
It's Braum. Let's see. Yeah. Worst card or like worst thing. Looking through, probably say, God, what's do nothing here? I feel like some of this stuff that seems like it's trying to cross over with Noxian, like the When I Survived, Unscarred Reaver, When I Survived Damage, grant me +3/+0. Feral Mystic, that's like, you know, I'd probably say Unscarred Reaver. That's probably like the worst one because it's just not in a good archetype, you know.
Yeah.
And not even that great a card in the archetype.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, having only 3 health in a deck that's trying to utilize tons and tons of health, just not that good.
Exactly.
Yeah, worst champ is probably Braum. That makes sense. Man, I almost want to say either Warding Stones or Wolf Rider, because what is Wolf Rider even doing? Wolf Rider is one of the most... Oh, or Iceborne Legacy. That's also a really bad card. Oh man, there are a lot of bad cards. But yeah, like Wolf Rider just doesn't make any sense. It kind of is counterintuitive to what it wants to do. It has a plunder ability to ramp you, but it's also a 4 mana 4/3 overwhelm, so it clearly wants to attack on the turn it's played. Like, there's just a lot of weird stuff going on with this card. I suppose you could be running things that do direct damage before playing it, but that seems like, you're really relying on that for its plunder trigger. It's just, it feels like this card's kind of a mess and all over the place.
Yeah, it feels like
Yeah,
most of Freljord, honestly. Just like looking through
I
it.
feel like we said that about this card when we when it was previewed.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't think I've seen it played anywhere since then, so pretty sure it's just a poopy card and they pooped on it.
All right, so I'm gonna actually swerve a bit on worst champion. I'm gonna say
Swerve.
Tryndamere. Not that I'd rather be like if I had to put either Braum or Tryndamere in my deck, I'd probably put Trynd. But on the other hand, when I'm building decks, I'm more likely to consider Braum than Tryndamere, because Braum, like, he has a thing he's doing, right? What Tryndamere is doing is he's being a worse finisher than the card you should have put in.
Yeah.
Now worst non-champion.
There's just like
I'm
so
gonna-
many traps here.
I'm gonna give a pass to the Yetis, the Poros, and the Elnuks. They're all bad, but they're bad because the other two regions exist instead of having triple the support, or the other two tribes, right?
That
So I'm
makes
giving them
sense.
all a pass.
I can see
But
that.
you know who doesn't give a pass? Avarosan Outriders. That card is. I've seen it play. It's actually
I was
okay
actually- yeah.
in the all Freljord deck, but A, it locks you into playing mostly or all Freljord,
Yeah.
and B,
Yeah.
for something that should immediately impact
Upsides.
the board, it
Yeah.
doesn't, right? You're spending your
Yeah,
turn
it's so
4
bad.
on something with that critical 3 health, so again, not
Yeah.
great there. And what you're getting is amping up something later, which is giving your opponent time to react to it, right? You know, if you
Yeah.
happen to hit something huge and then you have an enormous overwhelm, great. But if you hit your Omen Hawk, then you've got a 4/4 Omen Hawk that your opponent doesn't have to respect. And
Yeah,
if you hit something huge, they were saving their removal for it anyways.
Right.
Yeah, I was actually gonna circle back and say this is probably the worst one because it's such a trap. Like, it's so bad. And it's like it's so
and just-
mixed too.
Numerically, it's not that bad, right?
Exactly,
And when I've seen it
yeah,
play, it
yeah.
hasn't felt terrible. It's just felt like it was always in a bad deck, which, again, sorry, Freljord, the whole region has some roughness going there.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's got 3 health. I think it would literally take it way up in my book if it was a 2/4.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Like, that's
I
all I
get
would
that.
need. Or, you know what? Hell, make it a 3/4. You know, it's the Allegiance ability on every other Allegiance card is not, like, costed at more than a mana, and here this is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally see that. 3/4 would make this card a lot better. Like,
Yep.
that would make the mono Freljord deck a bit more considerable. Just the fact that, like, its big payoff card isn't just the poopiest of poop.
Yeah. It's so
Like,
bad.
seriously, for some simple, really straightforward math, let's assume that the Allegiance abilities are all roughly of equivalent strength. They aren't, but we're just going to assume that for a basic
Yeah, it's so bad
comparison.
versus Bannerman. Yeah.
Look at Mistwraith.
Yeah.
Mistwraith gives you its Allegiance ability, and it's a 4/3 for
Yeah.
a 4.
Yep.
Bannerman gives you its Allegiance ability, and it's a 4/4 for 4, or at least it used to be. They nerfed it because it was too good. The freaking Yordle, whose name I forget, gives
Yordle
you his
Grifter,
Allegiance
I think.
ability, and he's only a 3/3, but he also gives you the warning shot whether or not you hit the
so
Allegiance.
much though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, so he's a 3/3 and a warning shot for 4. This guy's just a 3/3. I guess he's got Overwhelm, but Overwhelm's just worth less than those other things, is what I'm trying to say.
Also, think he like draws a card or something, isn't that right? Or
He draws a card as the Allegiance ability.
Yeah,
okay.
For the other
Which is
guy.
insane.
Yes.
Long story short, this guy needs to either this guy needs another point of health, or the Allegiance ability needs to be amped so it's more immediate, right? Like maybe grant the top value of your deck 3/3 and draw it.
Or like give it something on board that I don't know, like something. Jeez, I feel like was Freljord we're right scared that like Freljord were too good when they made this like to start with because like there's just some cards in here I'm like
Nah,
this is trash.
I think that Freljord is just. I think that. I think they're benchmarking this against Magic, right? I think that they've looked at this late game region and said, "Here's how we make late game cards," and that works. And then they forgot that ramping doesn't matter in this game.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
I know too that like at one point the big Freljord cards were super scary. Like, She Who Wanders used to have, or not, yeah, used to have
Used
like
to have Overwhelm.
used to have Overwhelm and Regenerate.
Or was it just
wow.
Regenerate?
I might have been both, honestly, but I mean, a lot of those late game cards used to be really big and scary. So there was a time way back when those cards were insane. So
All right, so for She Who Wanders, I went to look this up. She was a 9 cost, not a 10 cost. She had Regeneration, and let me see if the text changed.
I think the clarity.
And she hit champions.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think there might kind of have been a point in time where Freljord was just too good, and then a lot of stuff maybe got nerfed around it when they were first building it.
Let's talk about how we bring it back then, right? Like, if we want to bring Freljord back, let's give She Who Wanders Regenerate back. She doesn't need to hit champions still. She doesn't need to go down to 9, but let's give her Regenerate at least.
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable. Makes her a really, really good, gives her a lot of good staying power. That definitely helps a lot. I mean, I think maybe even just making better making ramp stuff that actually does something.
I don't think that I think leaning into ramp is still a trap because, again, it's inherent card disadvantage in this game.
Sure, but do it in such a way that it's not card disadvantage. Such a way that it actually
just draw a card on Catalyst of Eons. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Basically better versions of Catalyst of Aeons, which is currently the best ramp card, but even then, you're usually spending a whole turn to just get 3 life back and then, have 1 more mana crystal for next turn. It's usually not putting you too far ahead, especially because
I ended up cutting Catalyst of Eons from all of my late game Freljord decks.
Yeah. I also think that a very interesting thing about that card as well is that it kind of works counterintuitively because a lot of times you end up spending your spell mana to use it, and then you kind of can... There are plenty of situations you can end up with less mana on the turn after you cast it overall, because you used spell mana to cast the card.
Yeah.
Which is also just a little bit awkward. Again, it's rarely going to be a make or break, you're not going to cast the card because this happened, but, it's still something that needs to be thought about, that you're really not getting as much as, you're not getting that much out of the card, really.
Yeah. And one more thing, let's try to pick a tribe and support it. I don't care if it's Poros or Elnuks or Yetis, but pick one, please.
Yeah.
Or alternately, just add 2 support cards for each tribe every expansion and do nothing else, and then just make all 3 tribes viable. But that would be ridiculous and probably silly.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I mean, or good. We can get more new Freljord decks out here. I mean, I think that supporting Poros needs to happen no matter what. So I mean, they need to add tons of Poros, tons and tons of Poros, all the Poros.
By the way, I'm revising my worst card in the region to Lonely Poro because he's so lonely. How could you do that, Riot?
That's okay. Look, that's maybe the most inappropriately designed card, because why would you want to make anybody that sad? But he does get super happy when you play another Poro, and that's a big plus for his card.
Heck yeah.
Okay, that's fair. So that's the best card in the region then, right? Worst card in the region, Lonely Poro. Best card in the region is
Jubilant
what's it called?
Poro.
Jubilant Poro. Yes.
Yeah. Because he's so happy when he gets a friend. That is a pretty good card though. It's such a moral victory to flip over your Poro. He's just so happy.
Indeed. All right, so moving on. We've done a bit of this, but let's quickly recap. What's the primary playstyle for this region?
Losing.
Yes.
Fair. for those of us looking for a slightly better answer, it's late game. It's ramp. It's make your deck. It's make your deck big, make your cards big.
I knew it was an L
and
word.
Run over your
Yeah.
opponent.
Yeah. Lose late game. Gotcha.
lose early game, lose late game. Concede
Cool.
immediately. Yep.
All right, and then some things you can do with this region as a secondary region.
Elixir of Iron and Fear of the North, man.
Yep. Buffs, card
Protect.
protection.
Protect,
Yep.
attack.
Omen
Yep.
Hawk messing with your opponent's removal.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then there's also the secondary control package. You know, it does I found that the combination of Avalanche and Anivia can supplement other regions' control packages fairly well.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And what's his name? Kindly Tavern Keeper and Bjerg also play well in that type of strategy.
Yep.
Jerky.
Yep. Bjerg is one of the best card draw spells in the game. That's for sure.
What about
yeah.
some?
Units,
What about some
whatever.
good deckies? Some good decks to build around. I mean, we already talked about Ash, but what else?
Yeah, you've got the obvious Ash and all the freezing cards deck. But
Mhm. You've got Sejuani for tempo and kind
yeah,
of a mid-range
I don't usually
plan.
build around Sedge.
No, yeah.
Right, Sedge is like a card you put in if your deck is going to be damaging your opponent a lot.
Yep.
Though I guess there is the Sedge Teemo kind of that deck is fairly built around Sedge.
Yeah. You do have some memes that you can build with Sejuani. That's for sure.
And then the other three champions are just general control champions, right? Braum, Anivia, Tryndamere, you put them into controlling decks. I guess
Well,
actually, one aside, Anivia plays very well with the Rekindler. And
Yeah,
the
that's
harrowing
true.
and other ways of reviving her. So
Just
there's
being
the
mid-range value.
the all-in Anivia decks are are Shadow Isles recursion decks, which are kind of
Yeah.
fun.
Those are pretty neat. I haven't seen one in forever, but they are super neat. That with Ionia as well for like Dawn and Dusking Anivia.
Yes.
It's another
Ooh,
really
yeah.
fun strategy.
Heck yeah.
So there's certainly some jank that's available and like pretty super cool when it works. And I think some of those decks could potentially have some tournament viability as well. But as long as they're
Oh yeah,
expecting
I mean
a
those
certain
decks
thing.
have real skewed matchups, which is good for tournaments. Actually, not bad,
Yep.
Mhm.
So
or can be good for tournaments. We should say.
yes, can be good, might be good.
All right, so we talked about some of that stuff, and we've kind of talked about this a bit, but like, what else do we want to see in this upcoming patch? I guess in a couple months.
Make Freljord finishers great again.
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for the sort of nationalist bent meme joke coming in. Yeah, I mean, what else? I think I'd like to see them focus up and just pick, because it's looking at this Freljord thing. It's just like I just see like 3 or 4 archetypes that just have like one of them, and maybe 2 of them have succeeded, kind of, and then like the other 2 are just miserable failures. Like the frostbite thing works, and the kind of like the healing buff health thing works, but and like kind of control-y stuff, but this like take damage thing is a failure.
Yeah.
There's 3 different tribes. The ramp is kind of
Mhm.
it's just super convoluted.
I think buff Avaros and Outriders, step 1.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Fix Iceborne Legacy, step 2. Like at least make it fast speed.
And it doesn't need to be burst, right? There's enough
Doesn't
burst
need to be
speed
burst.
buffing in this game, but fast would
Yeah.
be nice.
Fast would be great. Make it fast at least.
Yep.
Buff Aurora Borealis and
Yep.
make it cost 0 mana. Make it summon 5 Poros and 5 Poro snacks.
Fill the board, baby.
Trust me, this is reasonable. This card will not be too good. It won't go in every deck. It'll only be played in the Poros deck, and it'll be fine. Just do that, and
Also,
allow me
like,
to play
Yeah,
40
go
of
for
it.
it. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Buff Heart of the Fluffed as well. Make that a bigger card. Don't touch Tarkaz. I don't know what the fuck you would do with him.
They should just make a region for Poros.
That's
Like
true.
honestly, just make
That's-
make
yep.
make the Yetis this region. Destroy the Elnox because it's a dumb mechanic anyway. That's either going to be really good or really terrible. And
Yep.
then put the Poros in a different region. Also, can I just like point out, Entreat is a card that exists in Freljord. Like, what the hell is this
Yes.
doing? Like, what? Why is this here? Like, it's just so. They clearly did not.
It's-
They were just like, fuck this region.
Freljord is the late game region, and champions are your late game engine. That's what it's doing,
Yeah.
I think.
Entreat
Yes.
has been used for some interesting things in the past. Like, you can make some kind of like weird spell based like Ezreal decks and stuff like that. That kind of
Yeah.
use Entreat as your guarantee that you're going to draw the card. Basically,
Yeah.
just to have 6 of a champion. But it is weird that it's in Freljord.
That's
But
what
I-
I'm saying. Yeah.
I think that it makes sense though because it might be too good in any other region.
Yeah, which is like, again, it just makes it feel like this was the like dumpy stepchild Jack. I mean, of course, that's just like sort of like working backwards from the answer, but like
Right.
it just feels so out of place.
Yeah,
you know.
I 100% agree with that. It's a very
Yeah.
weird card.
Something I'd like to see from Freljord is I'd like to see cards that utilize their control tools, but not just doing one of them at a time. Right, Freljord has some amount of healing and some amount of AoE and some amount of finishers, and exactly one card that does more than one of those at once, and it's She Who Wanders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, let's see a card that, when it enters the battlefield, does damage to everything. You know, other than She Who Wanders, or a big finisher that heals you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, something that plays all of these games at once
Right.
and
Seems
isn't
like
just
that.
Anivia in the champion slot. Because yes, I love Anivia. Anivia is the best.
Or something that like it buffs one of your creatures, it, like heals your creature. That's literally in Bilgewater. It's like it heals your creatures and rallies. You could do something like heals your creatures and I don't know, gives
You
you a
could-
pat on the head. I don't care.
Yep. You could give him some type of win condition type card too that makes holding the game down for control
Oh yeah,
better. Because make Fiora not the only alternate win condition card.
yeah, sort
Oh,
of like
kinda
a
like
weird
that.
enchantment type thing.
Yeah. Some immobile creature that just says if this card lasts 10 turns on the
Actually,
board, you win the game.
yeah,
Or just
actually,
like an
because,
expensive
like-
spell
because-
that does that, right?
What's
You know, we already
what's
got
that?
the spell-based finisher in War Mother's Call, right? So let's
Oh, yeah.
let's double down. Let's do another spell-based finisher that's does increasing damage to everything. Does
Yeah.
1 damage to everything on the board, then 2 damage to everything on the board, then 3 damage, including the nexuses, right? So that if you heal your nexus and they don't because you're the control deck,
Yeah,
you'll win.
that's pretty
good.
interesting. That might
I
be
like that a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. What was I gonna? What was I gonna do? I don't know. I lost it. Oh well. It probably wasn't that good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good summation of Freljord. Just kind of stay away. I mean, not stay away for now, but just know that we're thinking about you, Freljord, and hopefully Riot
Use
is too.
cautiously is what we're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Damn, I thought
Remember to use snow responsibly.
I can't. Oh well, I
Yeah.
lost it. All right. Well, now we're gonna walk on over and sit on down in my meme corner. It's time out for memes. So the first one is sort of a cutesy little thing. What do you guys think? Like the maybe not the favorite, but like the sort of the like
Traditional?
standard the standard bearer of cuisine is in each region. I'm gonna let you pick. What do you think the one for Bilgewater is, Dan?
Alligator.
Okay, just alligator. They
It's
just
just alligator.
It's
They
just
They
alligator.
pick up an alligator and they just fucking bite its head
they just
off.
bite it. That's
Nah,
pretty,
it's
that's
right.
squid, Stan. It's squid.
Yeah, I could see
It's
that.
like
I
deep
think
fried,
alligators-
like
yeah.
squid stuff. You take a full squid, you have to deep fry it, and then you just chop it up and serve it.
Heck yeah,
Okay.
I like that.
See that.
Yeah. What about Demacia? What are they eating in Demacia? I'm trying to look at War Chefs and see what he's got
Pro-
going on. back
Probably just straight up whey protein. Just
Let's see.
at all times. They just
Yeah, it looks sort of like a standard medieval fare of food.
yeah.
A
Yeah.
balanced part of a balanced breakfast. In fact, the entirety
Yeah.
of a balanced breakfast is what Demacia
Exactly.
eats.
They just
And a
have that
balanced
like
lunch and a balanced
TV.
dinner.
Yeah, it's just like that TV breakfast ad.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
and potatoes.
The big one I want to know is Ionia, because I don't think there's any indications
Leaf.
of food anywhere.
They eat
What do they
leaf.
eat?
Leaf.
They eat what?
Leaf.
Leaf.
Just leaf.
You mean that sweet, sweet ganj, dude?
That too.
Okay.
I mean, you can't really subsist off of that alone, but like that's a start. They definitely smoke weed in Ionia for sure.
Do you think they get their leaves from the saplings and Shadow Isles?
No, because those are living. I'm pretty sure the whole thing is like they're like super
Oh, they're very
vegetarians, 'cause
Buddhist, like one with
yeah,
nature.
exactly. So they're
Which
just,
is
you know,
why, and they're also very artsy, which is why what they actually serve, their ideal cuisine, is edible arrangements.
yes, that makes sense.
It's all fruit and vegetables, but done up in the prettiest ass way you've ever seen.
I just love the concept of these, like, you know, coffee shop hipsters, like boho coffee shop hipsters, just like talking about had their great edible arrangement they got in the mail last weekend.
Yo, that's Ionia to the fucking T.
What about Noxus?
Or maybe apropos of the leaf we were talking about, edibles arrangements.
Nice, dude.
Dude. Noxus eats the exact opposite, and it's just raw meat.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Probably
sometimes
themselves.
It's cooked meat. Sometimes it's cooked meat. Fire is fun in Noxus.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily use it for cooking. They get too distracted in the process of cooking and like kick over the fire.
I mean, they definitely eat human meat because they're all huge and buff. So like, it's definitely some HGH in there.
That's true.
That's how that's how cannibalism works. You get really buff when you become a cannibal.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll just get down to the last couple here. Freljord. Do they just eat snow?
Yeah, snow cones.
Nice. Dude.
And ice cream.
Huh?
Yeah. And
Snow cones and ice cream, boys.
Yeah, they do have a signature card for this, so yeah, Poro Snacks makes sense.
And then Shadow
also
Isles.
yak milk.
What do they eat? Shadows?
Souls!
Nice. All right, that solves that one.
Souls!
And finally,
Oh, wait,
I think we've discussed it here a little bit, but we should nail down each region's like good tribe. So, like I said,
dude,
what's up?
we didn't eat anything in Piltover.
Oh my goodness!
Which
what
is
do you,
two different regions.
What are they? Mushrooms? Mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
They all eat mushrooms.
Yeah.
Just the Piltover gets the
Pilty-
nice mushrooms and Zona
Pilties
gets the
eat
bad
mushrooms, Zonites eat mushrooms, but only Zonites go to jail.
Well. So P and Z does eat mushrooms, but they're like microdosing on them because they think it makes them much more.
Okay.
Yeah, but then the police come in and raid only the Zonites.
Right, which is pretty accurate.
Very cool policing strategy, guys.
Yeah. I was thinking it was like
yeah.
TV dinners, but then like Piltover gets the ones that say gourmet on it. Just to really drive that class conflict home.
Yeah, exactly. They get the ones that are like the fancy new TV dinners that have like microwave film on. Yeah, so we kind of talked about this a bit, but each region's tribe. So I think we've kind of nailed it down. Freljord should be Yetis. Poro should be their own separate region. And then Elnuck should not exist. So
all right.
Now we have some couple decisions. Who gets the spiders, Shadow Isles or Noxus?
Shadow Isle. Noxus. Noxus actually gets the spiders.
Okay.
Because
I think I agree with that.
Something else. Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
And then I think Shadow Isles, they get saplings maybe? Like tree-based
Shadow Isles
creatures?
get ghosts. It's just like it's ephemeral tribal. You just add the word ghost to every ephemeral unit, and you're good.
Pretty
much, that's perfect.
They get ghosts. So saplings are just tree ghosts.
All right, now we got Demacia, which I think is elite. I think I'm fine with that. Just like sort of like advanced army units.
I'm okay with that for what the game's at right now, but since they haven't introduced the beefy boy subtype yet, they haven't perfected Demacia.
Yeah, so we'll just change.
On, Rito. Where's the beef?
Yeah, we'll just change elite to beef in like 3 months.
And then we'll be good to go. It'll be a nice clarity patch.
Yeah, exactly. What about Ionia? What is their tribe? I'm not
stoners?
Sure.
Plants.
Stoners.
It's just plants.
It's not the plants aren't the tribe. The monks and the
it's like ninjas, right? So like
ninjas.
What if we just did a tribe of Yasuos? Like every card has a Yasuo
It's
tribe.
ninjas, but cards are never publicly ninjas. They're only secretly ninjas. Like half the
Ooh.
Okay.
region's already ninjas, you just don't know it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's like shifting. You like got to play the deck first before you do it.
There's actually a card in game that gives +1/+1 to all ninjas. You just have to find it first.
I like that.
Ah. I
like
like
that.
doing a little
Sort of a Where's
scavenger hunt
Waldo.
in my card game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That's pretty cool.
P and Z. P and Z.
Robots.
Yeah,
Robots.
like
Yeah. You got
yeah, it's probably robots. Huh?
you got high class robots. You got low
Cyborgs.
class robots.
Cyborgs.
Mm.
Cool ass cyborgs.
Yeah.
And then finally, Bilgewater.
A pirate.
Oh, it's sea monsters.
Oh, yeah, we got a fucking contention here.
We actually have one there. We're not just making shit up.
They
Pirates
do,
versus sea monsters.
but it's
Oh, it's
definitely
literally a
pirates.
sea monsters. Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally sea monsters.
Except
but...
Riptide Rex is definitely a sea monster, and he doesn't have that title. I mean,
No, he's not a sea monster. He's a street shark, and they're the heroes. Don't call
That's a
him a
good point.
monster.
that's a
Yeah,
good
Street
point.
Sharks versus sea monsters is the conflict.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Street shark pirates.
Well, I think we've nailed that down. Like that's a flavor win across the board. I'm sure everyone's gonna appreciate that, and Riot's gonna get that worked in really shortly.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's gonna about do it for us here. So for Run the Terra, I've been Grandmaster Dan.
I've been the world's biggest Anivia fan.
And I'm Stan Jarzewski, and I don't believe Olivia is that good. Oh!
Wow.
Shots fired.
And we'll still be those people next time, and we'll see you then.